Hi there guys, I hope you're all well and I hope you're all gearing up for a really wonderful Imbolc. I know I am. Again, as usual, I haven't had as much time as I might have liked to really think about the Sabbath coming up to it, but I have been doing some thinking and I've been looking through my notes from last year and that kind of thing. And I'm definitely very excited about it. And very excited about doing ritual again because the last ritual I did was for the full moon this month, and I decided, because I'm quite tired this week, I'm kind of getting over a cold, and because I've been very busy as well, of course the two things happen at the same time, that's life, isn't it? I decided not to do a separate ritual for the dark moon. And my last ritual was actually really powerful, I suppose, and different. I mean, not different in that I did something completely different or that my experiences were above and beyond anything that I'd ever done or experienced before, but something is starting to click for me. And for some reason, all my thinking about ritual and my changing ritual practice and especially my changing relationship with the Morrigan, for some reason it's inspiring me to think a bit more about magic and to talk to you guys a bit more about magic and my thoughts about it. I probably have mentioned a good few times in my videos that magic is not something I use in my spiritual practice. I don't consider myself to be a magical practitioner. I don't use the term witch, although at various points in my life, I have sort of toyed with using the term witch to describe myself. And I used to engage with magical practices a little bit on and off when I was younger. But magic is not now currently something that is part of my practice, and while you could say, or I could say, that I don't believe in magic, I feel like it's definitely not that straightforward, and I feel like it's a bit reductive to put it that way. And I've always felt, although I very definitely haven't been going down the avenue of practicing magic for the last couple of months at least, or as my spiritual practice has been maturing, it hasn't been going that way, but I have always felt drawn to say it's not part of my practice at this time. And I've always felt as though there was some possibility for it, for that to change, for it to come into my practice in some major way. The funny thing about me and magic is that although, because I came back to my spirituality from a very naturalistic, almost atheistic kind of perspective, magic just wasn't really something that I wanted to get on board with or wanted to. I suppose it's more of an ego thing. It's as much as anything. It's more that I didn't really like the idea of saying to people, oh, I'm a pagan, I'm a witch, I do magic, I do ritual, I do this kind of thing. I much preferred the idea of being able to say to people, oh, I'm a spiritual atheist. That just sat with me a lot better in terms of the people that I was spending time with at the time. I was spending time with some very nihilistic kind of people who I have since broken all ties with, in a sort of, not in such a dramatic way as that sounds, in a quite organic kind of way. But actually, pretty much all of the times that I have started down the spiritual labyrinth, it has been because I have felt attracted to magic and have started reading about magic and witchcraft and basically just got fascinated by it. The very first time that I went down this path was I had pretty much embraced the atheist label. I had decided maybe a year or two previously that I was definitely an atheist, but I hadn't thought about it that much. It was when I was about 14 years old, and I think I just was exposed to the idea that there were adults, seemingly completely rational, normal human beings, normal adult human beings who practiced magic, believed in magic and believed that it worked. And I'd never actually, well, I lie, and I suppose this is why I was open to the idea. I was about to say I'd never been exposed to that idea before, but I sort of had, through, I've mentioned before that one of my parents has sort of experience with things like, well, I won't go into it in too much detail, but I was had been exposed to the idea that adults could believe in spirits and or telepathy or things like that, or even some precognition. But the idea of this kind of candle burning ritual spell, the idea that this was something that people actually did and actually believed worked was new to me. And that was how I started actually looking up. That's how I came to paganism. I came to it through witchcraft. I Googled witchcraft. I think I came across the Witchfox website, which actually has a really wonderful kind of Witch 101 kind of series that I read and was just really fascinated by. So having said that, it very quickly went down a more spiritual path for me, because I quickly realised that for most people, witchcraft was very much intertwined with religion. And then it kind of all went from there. But then again, when I came back to it again in, say, 2010 or 11, what actually got me started back down the path of spirituality again was that I started reading up on witchcraft again, because I was thinking about a storyline for a book that I was thinking of writing. Although my relationship with witchcraft and magic has been convoluted and never really took off for me, it has always held a certain fascination for me, and I do every now and then, although I never completely click with it, I do go back to reading books or forums on particularly traditional witchcraft and stuff like that, and I get really fascinated by that. So I think I've probably gone on enough now at this point about what my beliefs are about this and my background, and I just want to talk a little bit about where I'm at right now and why I think I don't use the term magic. So as you probably know, magic is often boiled into two different categories, into high magic and low magic. High magic is seen as a sort of ceremonial magic, which is very akin to ritual and very much intertwined with religion and sort of getting in contact with the divine and that kind of thing, and or bringing down divine power into the self, that kind of thing. And then there's low magic, which is more derived from folk magic. So low magic, I feel it encompasses quite a lot of different things, but I feel like it has its roots in that sort of herbalism, healing kind of work, because when you think about it, obviously before modern medicine there was a lot more scope for a lot more, obviously there's still a lot of alternative medicine now, but there was a lot more demand for alternatives and alternative ways to go about healing and things like that. And then of course, along with folk magic, we don't just have the healing aspects, we also have the aspects where we are, where some people are trying to influence others, or just trying to influence the course of their day-to-day lives. I think that for me, one of the things that turned me off magic, and this is something that I see a lot with other naturalistic pagans or atheistic pagans, a lot of them don't actually like the fact that magic and paganism are so intertwined, which personally I find a bit silly, because the two movements have been, just by the entire way that they came about in modern times, they are just inevitably intertwined. That is just the way that they came about. But I also find it a bit strange, because there seems to be this attitude that all there is to magic is this sort of casting a love spell, casting a prosperity and abundance spell for money or a career, or to find a card to buy and that kind of thing. And I think there are quite a lot of naturalistic or atheistic spiritual people who tend to look down on that kind of aspect of magic, because it doesn't work within their framework of how magic could possibly work. Basically for people like me and for people like them, at least the primary way that they understand magic, that magic might work if they're going to integrate it into their belief system at all, is through the psychological model. So that magic is a means of altering the consciousness, the unconscious, altering the psyche and bringing about change in that way. So if we're talking about day-to-day mundane changes, a lot of the time it just seems a little bit, there's a lot of maybe asking spirits to help or asking outside sources for help, and it just doesn't really tie in with that kind of framework or that kind of way of thinking. And I think for me, I just have always felt that while I feel that there is quite a lot of scope for me to use magic in a way that, as a sort of self-development tool, I just have never really felt drawn to doing that. And I suppose the way that I have gone, instead of using magic, I have gone towards tarot for that kind of stuff. The kind of stuff where you have, a limiting belief, or a bad pattern or a habit, something that you want to break out of, something that you want to control or change about yourself. An awful lot of people, and indeed quite a lot of naturalistic pagans or pagans who don't, have a sort of dualistic spirit matter view on things, or you know what I'm trying to say. There are certainly pagans and other spiritual people who use the psychological model, and they do use magic in whatever shape or form to do that kind of work, to do that kind of inner work, to bring those changes about. But for some reason it's never really clicked for me. I did actually try it at one point, but it just always has felt a little bit phony for me, because I feel as though I'm playing pretend more than any other kind of ritual or any other kind of spiritual practice that I do. The magical aspect for me, I didn't feel like I was getting enough meat off the bone with it. I felt as if it was almost like an easy way out for me, that I was sort of, I'll do this, I'll make this whatever, I'll go through this process, I'll cast this spell, and then my problem will start to alleviate itself. For me, it's been a lot more useful to use tarot for that, and tarot has been really instrumental in bringing about, or helping me to maybe learn more about myself in order to bring about internal change. So I think that's one of the major reasons why magic hasn't quite managed to work its way into my practice yet. But then there is this whole other aspect to magic, which is a little bit more complicated, and I wouldn't say that it's completely two different camps of, ceremonial magic and then sort of mundane magic. Gosh, that's a bit of a paradox, but you know what I mean. I feel as though that kind of inner work sort of bridges the two. We have the magic that is maybe working towards changing things in our outer world, in our lives. Then we kind of go into the more kind of inner work, where we're looking at changing the psyche, doing shadow work, that kind of thing. But then we've got this sort of mysterious kind of ceremonial magic that I've never really gotten to grips with, where it's all kind of more, I think often for me, I feel as though the aim of it is less clear. And it's less clear to me where you draw the line between straightforward ritual and ceremonial magic. They're kind of one and the same thing to a large extent. But I think that it's that area of kind of more ceremonial type magic that actually interests me, and that is where I think I could actually sink my teeth into it. This is all turning out a little bit more rambly than I was hoping it would. I was hoping that it would have a bit more structure once I started talking, but I'm very much still in the process of working this all out in my own head, so you'll just have to bear with me a bit. One of the things I realised was that, yes, we have ritual, and ritual is, I suppose you could say that ritual is a form of magic. I don't know, is that something that people buy into or not? But we have the shape of the ritual. We have the ritual, maybe the poetry that we speak, the words, the actions to set up, to either cast a circle, which isn't something I really do, but either cast a circle, set sacred space, or just put us into that state. But as I've said before a couple of times, I used to have an issue with, I would set all that up and then I wouldn't really know what to do, because very often in pagan practices, what happens then at the center of the ritual is actually the magical working. And because I wasn't really bringing magic into my practice, I was finding that part in the middle a bit lacking. I used to sort of meditate, but I wasn't really going anywhere in particular with that meditation. And it just, it felt as if it kind of just fell down for me a bit at that point. Whereas it's kind of gotten a bit opposite for me now at this stage. I've gotten over that hump where I was feeling that some of the actions and words were getting a bit redundant and a bit repetitive. I feel like I've kind of gotten over that again now, and I am still using the same words, but I've gotten back into the flow of it, and I'm happy enough to do those same actions most times in order to get myself into the ritual framework. But what has most changed for me, and I think I mentioned this in a video, but it might have just been in a blog post, what has most changed for me in ritual in the last couple of months is what happens at the centre. And the centre of my ritual has actually properly become the core. And what happens there for me is generally what I understand to be interaction with deity. More often than not, this is interaction with the Morrigan, but also there are various other deities that I work with, but primarily I would say the Morrigan and Ganesha at this time. I feel like funnily enough, I haven't worked with Gaia in the same capacity. There was another goddess who I was working with, but I actually feel at the moment like the Morrigan is sort of, she's very all-encompassing for me. So what happens if I encounter a different female figure in a meditation or in a sort of vision, I will generally end up just saying, okay, well, I think that was actually just the Morrigan, because she is just so all-encompassing and pervasive for me. But what I actually started realizing was that I don't really need to stop there. What I've ended up doing is sort of going into a meditative state and allowing visions to come. I suppose you could say that I'm going into the astral realm. Is that right? I very rarely use those words or that kind of terminology to explain what I'm doing. But that is, I'm starting to see it as sort of a journeying to the astral plane, or my personal understanding of what that is, which is basically just entering that hazy borderline between my conscious mind and my unconscious mind, where images and experiences are sort of bubbling forth in an almost dreamlike kind of way. I have still got a certain amount of control and I am still conscious. It's sort of a bit like active imagination. But I realised that seeing as this has been very powerful for me in the last couple of months, and I have had some very powerful experiences just by allowing myself to go there, by saying to myself, okay, I'm going to open myself up to going into that state, going to the astral plane or astral realm and allowing something to transpire. I've sort of started to realise that there are definitely magical workings that I could work around this. There are definitely magical techniques that I could use, not necessarily to enforce my will or to make changes in the external world, but rather I could focus those magical techniques onto basically strengthening my link to the astral realm, or what I understand to be the astral realm. I'm not sure if this is making any sense, but I basically just realised a whole other meaning of what magic might be for me, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be about imposing my will outside of myself, on the world, changing things, which is something that I can definitely justify to myself ways in which that can work or could work. It's all very convoluted and it does make sense in my head, but like I said before, when I actually go about doing it, it just doesn't make sense for me. But I feel like I am ready to start putting together a sort of ritual or ceremonial magic, I suppose you could say. I would love to experiment with magical techniques in order to commune with the Morrigan more, for example, or commune more with other deities. So I think that's pretty much as far as I've gotten, and this video really didn't quite go the direction that I was expecting it to, but that's okay. You know, most of the time I just turn on the camera and I start talking and I see where I go. If anybody has any experience with this, or they have any idea what I'm talking about, and they have anything they want to say, any comments they want to make, please, you know, share your experiences. Let me know what magic is to you. Are you one of those people who gets to the core of a ritual and does a sort of magical working for something in their mundane life? Or do you get to the core of your ritual, do you do a magical working, do you do inner work? I would definitely say that actually at the Sabbats I do actually do sort of magical inner work. But I suppose it's gosh, I never really thought about that before. I do tend to have more kind of ritual actions, but again, it's ritual more than magical working is how I see it. It's just kind of the culmination of ritual, and I don't have a problem with figuring out what I should be doing at the center of the Sabbath rituals, because each each of the sabbats or sabbats, I always say sabbats, but I know other people say sabbats, they have a very particular kind of meaning to them, and a particular kind of association with the psyche, or with what we might want to be trying to work within ourselves at that time. So I find it, you know, relatively easy to think of things, you know, either I'm doing release work, or I'm thinking about what I want to manifest. But I definitely think there's a lot more scope. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, currently I'm reading Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine on the recommendation of Kellyanne of the Four Queens. I've just started reading that, and I think it will be useful for me, but it's just not quite, it's not quite there. It's not quite me, you know what I mean? I can sort of apply a lot of what he's saying to myself, and I think it will probably be maybe more useful the further I go into the book. But it's just still not quite, it's not one of those books that I pick up and read and go, yes, that's me. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I think I've rambled on enough, but yeah, do let me know if you have any thoughts on this. Thoughts are definitely welcome, and this is just the very beginning of probably quite a convoluted road for me.